This week we're going to listen to the sound of our heart and reflect on the beat. I'm a person who finds it fairly easy to have an invisible spot in my chest. You know, a lifetime of asthma, and it's very easy for me just not to feel that area. So it's been quite a revelation to tune into the functioning of my heart, because it's made it so much easier to feel through here. And it's when I'm feeling things, it's this sense of being receptive in my chest. It's interesting, you know, if you bang your chest, you can hear the sound. It's a resonant structure. And it really contributes to the sound of our voice, as do all the, you know, resonant structures within our body, but certainly the chest. It's really easy to feel. And the thing is that it works both ways. It also resonates sounds that are coming from outside into within our body. So it's possible to feel, you know, the sound in your environment through your chest. It's the loveliest feeling for me to, you know, because it's so novel. And the thing is that the heart itself is so big, and the movement that goes on is so large. In fact, I'll share my screen now and we can look at some pictures here. Not that one yet. We'll come back to that. Well, that's pretty interesting, isn't it? This one first. You know, this is a slice down through the middle of our body. And, you know, it's focused mostly on the left ventricle, which as it contracts is sending blood up through the aorta, goes down to the, you know, round to the back of the body. And then, you know, there's the aorta down here. And next to it, you have the vena cava, you know, which brings blood back in the other direction up through the diaphragm into the heart, and also from above. You know, you can see the heart, the blood moving through there, can't you? And also just how much everything's full structure. And, you know, it's quite a big movement that, you know, it's easy just not to notice. And the interesting thing about the heart is it's like breathing. It's an involuntary process that we can observe. And you can actually manipulate it. You can slow your heartbeat down. But for the most part, it's a way of actually absorbing or sensing your body functioning, just the life in your body through paying attention to the heart. But it's the heart and it's the vascular system. Let's go down to this one. Whoops, that's what I haven't done. That's better. I mean, I love this picture just for how much everything around it is being moved. And then, you know, her ribs aren't moving in this picture. And she's probably maybe been asked to hold her breath as she's taking it. But there would be the movement of the diaphragm and the ribs as well. So this whole structure is actually moving inside us. And it moves in a rhythm. And that rhythm, as we felt last week, can be felt all over the body via the pulse, because the sound of that movement travels right through the body, through the bloodstream. So it's an interesting thing. It really makes me wonder, what is the sensation that we have within ourselves, within our body? How much does the sensation that we feel, through our muscles and through all the structures in our body, relate to the blood? Because remember, the blood is going from these large vessels and out to progressively smaller and smaller vessels till it gets to the skin, to every cell. There's this movement, this flow, and this pulse. I mean, consider that now, just the feeling within you. How much this is contributing. And there's something that's interesting in the nature of the sound as well, because sound isn't just an isolated thing. It moves. It has a a cycle. You get the loudest part, if you're hitting a drum, for instance, maybe when you bang the drum and you get this peak of the sound, but then the sound moves, it changes. It's a wave that keeps on shifting around. And you can see it's being transmitted through the blood. As you can see it, pulsing through here, through these veins. So that, the sound also travels in that way. So it has a duration. Like this. You think of maybe one full cycle as being one beat. Or actually, we'll make it 2 beats because the sine curve is going up and down. So there's, if there's a beat, the crescendo of the beat is at the top here and down the bottom. Another beat there. Well, all the way between there, you could divide that up into smaller multiples of that beat. And then it would be consistent. It's within that time frame. And if we move where we're out of that, we're not moving with this flow, it can feel a bit disjointed. So it's interesting just to listen to it. I've been working with my clients, and normally I'd pay attention to their breath as I'm working, and time the movements that I do with their breath. But now I started doing it with their heartbeat, because you can see someone's heartbeat just at the top of their stomach there, the base of their chest. You can often see the pulse moving, or I'll take their pulse. But I'm finding that as soon as I begin working on people, my heart rate slows and it becomes, gets to the same time as the person I'm working with. And it's easier to follow the heartbeat because it's quicker, so it's easier to make multiples of it. The other thing is it spreads. It's a wave that shifts out through every structure in our body. And there's all these sounds coming from inside. And it's the ability, I think, to adapt our heart rate, to where we are, that enables us to blend. In the same way that musicians, when playing together, their heart rhythms will sync as well. When everything is together, we can adapt ourselves to, to understand what's going to adapt ourselves to what's happening around us, where we're going to feel calmer. It's a complex little, look at this one here. This is seismic waves from this earthquake. Watch how on the right you've got going through the center of the earth, and on the left it's going through around the surface. But how everything reverberates when you get to the more dense structures of the 2 cores. It's the same thing with us. We have all these structures within our body that will resonate different pitches. So we have all these different pitches and rhythms that moving through our body in this way. And if you tune in and sense it, sometimes it can feel scattered, but other times, we can picture this sense of everything, all this complexity happening at once, but it starts to have this logic. And I think one of the major challenges that we have, one of the reasons that I've found it hard to tune into my chest is probably just difficult feelings. We're always trying to avoid difficult feelings, or prevent what's happening from actually happening in some way, or deny what's happening. But if we take a longer view, you can see this picture here, it's only two waves, one moving left to right or right to left, and one moving up and down. But the combination of the two of them plays out through our body in this interesting way. When we resist things, we tighten ourselves, we divide our energies, and we don't function as well. And often we resist things for the wrong reasons, really. And if we could take a longer view, we may see that things that seem like they're interrupting our flow can have a beauty of their own. We may have a wave that's traveling along in one direction, and then something comes to contradict it. So we focus on the clash, and the clash really in the relationship to what we were trying to achieve, and perhaps not perceiving the beauty in the clash and the fact that our wave is still going on regardless. So that's one of the things we're going to be focusing on today, is sensing right through our body, the waves that are there, and to think, how can we notice these pulses as we move? What's the effect of that? And, what happens if we actually, because the sound is being generated in the heart. We're hearing it through the inner ears, and all the sound that's reverberating through our body is through the pelvis, through the legs, through all the different structures. That comes through the inside of our body up to our eustachian tubes and into the inner ear. But, we can sense it in different places. And if we do sense it in different places, does that make a difference to the quality of our movement? In particular to our ability to free our rib cage and allow it to participate in the movement. So we're going to be feeling our pulse again down here in the femoral artery here. It's quite big, isn't it? You think of that flow of blood, in fact, let's just get rid of these ribs. There we are. Oops. So there's the heart. It's quite, look at the aorta here coming down. It's such a massive tube, isn't it? And sound reflects air better than, or conducts sound better than, fluid conducts sound better than air, because it's more dense. So, you look at this network of structures that this is all flowing through. It's, it's amazing. And the carotid artery, we're going to find that again. And remember, this is the hyoid bone, the larynx and the hyoid bone. It's easy to feel it there. And it's also sometimes easy to feel it up here the where it splits off and comes into the tongue. So we'll feel it there, and we'll feel it at the wrists and down at the feet. But it's traveling through our entire body, this amazing vascular system, down through the neck and up and into the brain here. And all through the brain, to every cell in our body. Come up here. Where are you? There we are. That's a better angle. We're just behind the heart now. Now we're in a blood vessel, or actually looking down into the heart. Come here. That's what I'm after. And from the femoral artery that we're feeling, that we're feeling last week. Let's turn you around. It goes right down into the legs. And it's quite a strong thing to actually feel that. And remember, it's splitting off from here and going in every direction through to every cell in our body, right down to the feet. Through into the pelvis. This vast network of vessels that brings essential oxygen that we need. If we don't get oxygen in our cells, they die. Look what happens in the heart and the brain if the blood vessel gets cut off. It's the most amazing system. To every cell in our body, over about 100,000 kilometers of potential loops. And it's a challenge to sort of sit there for that long too, I find, to find my pulse. Even I'm having trouble doing it. I'm doing heaps of it. But that's what we're going to work with today, is how we can actually move, and in particular roll our pelvis and feel, when we move our pelvis and the spine moves, how the whole the head, the pelvis and the chest move. And that in order to keep feeling here, we need to adjust our fingers. We need to move. Move our hands so that we can, follow the movement of the pelvis and still keep the sense. And you notice the thickness of the blood vessel here, both the vein and the artery. It's round, it has a shape. And if you just go slowly and you actually feel through there, and feel the shape of it, it just gives you this different appreciation of all the tissues in your body. And makes such a difference to me, certainly, into the sense of movement, the sense of the inside of the body, and the capacity to feel everything moving at once. So let's explore this. Let's explore, and take your time. If it's hard to find the pulse, or if you keep losing it, try not to get frustrated. Just keep coming back and, stopping and finding the pulse again and spreading our attention. So we're listening to this sound and to the nature of the beat. To the space between the beats, and that sense of how that the sound is shaped. I have a picture on on the Facebook page at the moment of a large taiko drum, Japanese drum. This is a massive one that fills a whole building, and it's interesting to listen to it, to listen to the the bang the drum, the skin starts vibrating. It's vibrating against the building and outside amongst the trees, and there's still sounds of birds. And then he plays on top of it, and he's playing within the time of the rhythm, and so it enables the drum to ring. And it's all these polyrhythms that are created. And the last time I tried it, it was the sound wasn't coming across, which is why I'm not playing it here. But I have it on the Facebook page, so I urge you to look at it. And in fact, maybe just in case you can't get to the Facebook page, I'll put the link in the chat. And you can watch it afterwards. There we are. So, let's explore this. So could you lie down on your back? Good. So consider your contact with the floor. The places where you're holding yourself, where you can still feel that you're braced in some way. Because if we tighten an area of our body unnecessarily, compresses everything, so that influences the flow of blood through our body. And just tune in now to this sound of your heart beating inside your chest. And the way that sound flows through the vascular system. So it's flowing through every part of our body. And if you can feel the sense of your heart beating, the sense of the pulse, that each beat is pushing blood out of the heart and round through the system and around our body in this endless cycle. And in the same way that if you sweep your hand through a body of water, it has a sound. It has a sort of a whoosh. Feel that in your own body. Now place your hands on your hips. Feel the the bony wings in the front of your pelvis, and then down to the pubic bone, at that point where there's the inguinal ligament there. So you feel the bone in the front of the pelvis, the top of the pelvis there, from the front of the bony wing down to the pubic bone. You can sort of press into the belly a little bit to feel, where it's firm is where the bone is, and above that, that's where all the belly is, full of all those organs. And find the femoral artery down in here. Move your hand from the front of the bony wing of the pelvis down toward the pubic bone, and you'll pass across the psoas and iliacus muscles and press down in there and listen with your fingertips for the pulse down here. Take your time finding it, moving your fingers slowly. And of course, if your arms are tense, it makes it much harder. So relax your shoulders as you're doing this. Let your arms soften. And just patiently listen with the fingertips for that beating of the pulse. And when you find it, just sit there and listen to it. That's the sound of your heart. Traveling down through the blood vessels. And it's quite a definite beat, isn't it? Well, that beat will be reverberating out from the blood vessel you're holding through all the tissues in your pelvis. And this is quite a large blood vessel. So, once you actually find the pulse there, you could just refine where your fingers are so that you could begin to feel the roundness of the blood vessel. It may be that your touch becomes more precise. You can feel between the structures, to get a sense of the actual shape of the artery and the sense of it beating. And you may have to, if you lose it, just come back, keep finding it again, patiently relaxing in your shoulders and arms. That makes it easier to feel. And remember that this pulse that you're feeling here is a reflection of what's happening in the heart itself. So now tune into your rib cage. And feel your heart beating in the rib cage. That's the origin of the sound. The actual sound of the beat is the sound of the valves closing. If you listen to it through a stethoscope or something where you can hear it more accurately, it's two of them. It sort of goes lub dub, lub dub. There's a longer sound and a shorter sound. The longer sound, the first one, is when the ventricles are filling up, and and the second one is after the heart is contracted and the valves shut, and that's the dub. And that's mostly what we're hearing now. That second sound. So that is reverberating through your entire rib cage. Can you sense that sound? Because sound waves travel in all directions. Can you feel it in the back of your chest? And out to the sides. So could you move your right hip down toward the floor as if you're reaching away with the right leg very slowly so that you could still feel the pulse, and then come back to the middle. So it's a very slow movement here. You know, if your pelvis was a clock, you know, we'd be reaching down toward 7:30 if 6 was down the bottom and 12 was at the top. And the thing is, remember, you can feel this sound in the artery down here, the femoral artery, and hear the sound probably, and hear it in your heart, and think of the size of the blood vessel that comes out of the heart, the aorta, and sweeps down along this next to the spine and then in front of the spine and divides in the pelvis to become these two big arteries here. You know, think of that whole structure as you're reaching the pelvis away, and you're pushing the pelvis down on the right hand side there. And of course that's influencing the entire torso. You know, to press the right hip down, probably something's happening with the rib cage on the left. Because when you're pressing the left or the right hip down, maybe the left hip is lifting a bit. You know, and if you're pressing the right hip, maybe your lower back is lifting a little bit, which lifts the rib cage up at the bottom. And maybe makes the left shoulder or that back corner of the rib cage press into the floor. And all the time you're doing it, your heart is still beating. Now leave that, rest for a bit. Just lie there and sense how that is. Can you sense the movement of your heart in the rib cage? Once again, hold on to the femoral artery. Take your time, relax your shoulders and arms, and find that pulse down in the groin there, in the hip. The more you soften in your shoulders, you soften in your arms, so you listen with the fingertips. And remember, the fingertips have the pulse of the heart in them as well, because blood flow is coming out of the heart through into the arms and down into the hands. And now could you reach down through the left hip? You press the left hip or the bottom of the left hip down into the ground and back. And you allow your fingers to move, so they're still riding on top of these blood vessels. Like a surfer riding a wave. And you can feel the fluid moving underneath you, within the tube of the artery. And pressing the bottom of the left hip down into the ground so your back arches a little bit. And feeling how the right shoulder, the top right hand corner of your rib cage also presses a little into the floor. And it's the sound of the heartbeat reverberating through the rib cage and through the blood all the way down into your pelvis here. And the more you relax your hands and your arms and your shoulders, easier it becomes to move and to feel. Now you can press the left hip down into the floor and then roll across the pelvis, so you press the top of the right side of the pelvis into the floor. So you're rolling in a diagonal line across your pelvis, listening to the pulsing of your heart. So you move your pelvis slowly enough that it's in harmony with this rhythm of your heart. And then go from the top right-hand side of the hip and then press the bottom of the right side of the pelvis into the floor, and then roll across the other diagonal, so up to the top left-hand part of the pelvis, and then down to the bottom right-hand part of the pelvis. Now, it may not be as easy to move in this direction. Don't force it. Just go wherever you can easily and comfortably. And, only as quickly as you can feel the pulse. When you allow your fingers or your hands to move with your pelvis, so that you're like a surfboard rider sitting on top of this blood vessel, riding this wave. And that's the interesting thing. What does tuning into the flow of blood through your body, from your heart down into the aorta and out through all the tubes, down into the legs, out to the chest, out through the arms and your fingers. What does tuning into the middle of your body like this enable you to feel? Sense the global field. The circulation of blood out to your extremities and back. You could roll your pelvis in a bit of a circle. And riding on top of these veins, these arteries. Relaxing in your shoulders. And leave that, just rest there. Everything flowing together. Well, could you place your hands now on the sides of your neck? From above or just below your ears, down the sides of your neck and in front of the spine, sort of behind the voice box, behind the little bit of bone that the tongue joins onto, the hyoid bone. And find the pulse in your common carotid artery on each side. Same as before, relax your shoulders, minimize the amount of effort in your arms. And that will make it easier to feel. And remember that the blood is flowing through your arms and your fingers. That same pulse, that sound is traveling right through to the fingertips. And when you find that pulse, just let everything relax. Quite possibly your arms are resting against your chest. Maybe you can feel the beating of the heart in the ribcage through your forearms. As well as the beating of the pulse in your carotid arteries. And once again, just reach down with the right, press the bottom of the right hip into the ground and then relax it. And do it slowly in a way that you can still feel this blood vessel. And then you could roll your pelvis around in a little circle, over to one side and then up, and then over to the other side and down, just whatever is easy for you. And a small movement. Because the most important thing is still to keep sensing the pulse. To consider that large movement in your heart, in the rib cage. And as you roll your pelvis in this tiny, easy circle, as you relax in your arms and your shoulders, as you soften in your neck, sense the flow of blood through your entire body. And I don't know how you'll experience the movement of blood out of these large blood vessels into the smaller ones and eventually into the capillary system, through your face, whether you'd feel that as a spreading warmth through your neck and face. A sense of the shoulders and arms filling out. Or, the sense of your legs around the legs softening. Backs of your knees. Your feet. And in your chest. Sense of warmth spreading right around your rib cage. As your shoulders relax. And then leave that. So could you roll over onto your stomach? Roll over onto your stomach. And maybe begin with your head on your hands, on your forehead. Forehead on your hands. And think, what is the sound of your heart here? Think of the beating of your heart, the size of the movement, and how the sound radiates out in all directions. Well, could you hold on to one of the wrists with your fingers? Find the pulse on one of your wrists. You know, the hands above your head. Once you've got it, you could sort of rest your head on the forehead of probably of the hand that's listening. It's a little bit easier to feel if the hand is, bent at the wrist, bent in rather than extended out. It's on the thumb side. And you're feeling in between or next to the tendons, and between the tendons and the bone, you can feel the round artery here, and that pulsing reflection of the beating of your heart. And when you find that spot, stay there, relax your shoulders, minimize the amount of effort that you're using in order to feel this blood vessel. And listen to the quality of the sound here. And how the sound, moves through to the next one. Sort of the wave of the sound, giving that sense of flow or the pulse. And it's that flow, paying attention to that flow and the space between the beats. That it sort of gives a visual to it so that you could feel the halfway point between the beat, or a quarter of the way between the beat. And you can move on the beat. So now, still holding on to the blood vessel here, could you roll your pelvis, down toward push the right hip down into the floor, the bottom of the right hip, and then let it relax. And then push the top of the left side of the pelvis into the floor, and then let it relax. Go across this diagonal across your pelvis. Slowly enough that you can still feel the pulsing of your heart through the blood vessel in your wrist here. And make it a very small movement. In fact, just do an easy movement in whichever direction with the pelvis, down or up, or both if that's easy. But take 3 heartbeats to move in one direction and 3 heartbeats to move in the other. And arrive right on the beat. When you're dancing, if you want to move in time with the beat, you have to you don't just put your foot down on the beat, you have to have your entire weight down on the beat. And feel that moment as you're traveling in one direction, you 1, 2, 3, and you're there. And then you're moving back, you come back to the middle, and on that third beat, you're in the middle. And then you move across again, so on the third beat, you're on the side. And, it's interesting to travel between the beats. Notice that to get to the first beat, you're already moving. So you get to 3, you get your pelvis at one direction, and then you start moving back on 3, so that you're already moving by the time you come to the first beat, second, and then the third. So sense the space between the beats. Leave that for a moment, just rest there. Well, find the pulse on the other wrist, or if that's too hard, you could find the pulse on the same wrist, and balance the forehead on the hand once you've found it. And remember to find the pulse on the wrist, have your hand, bent inwards a little bit, and relax in your shoulders. And you're feeling the pulse in the wrist here, but remember that's a reflection of what's happening in your heart. And that same pulse is ringing down in the pelvis. Well, could you move your head from side to side now? 3 beats to go in one direction, 3 beats to come back to the middle, and 3 beats to go in the other direction. Relax yourself as you're doing it so that you can find this consistency. This precision in movement. And as you relax in your neck and shoulders, and recalibrate to keep feeling in the blood vessel there, what is happening in your pelvis? Can you feel your pelvis moving as you're moving your head? Well, leave that for a second. Lift yourself up onto your elbows and find the carotid pulse on the sides of your neck here. Lifting yourself up on your elbows as if you're sitting around a campfire. Find the carotid artery here and the pulsing. And consider in this new position the feeling of your heart beating in the chest. Relax yourself here. And could you now move your rib cage? Where can you move your rib cage easily? In a circular sort of movement, but in a way that you can still ride the blood vessel. As you relax your legs and your neck, maybe it makes it easier to feel the way the rib cage can roll. And of course, for the rib cage to move away from the floor and over and then back down toward the floor, your pelvis needs to move. Your legs will move. Which is lucky because everything's connected. It needs to move for blood to flow through our body. And can you listen to this primary rhythm and allow it to inform the quality of the way you move? So your head and your chest and your pelvis can all move. You can soften. Well, leave that. Rest there on your stomach. maybe turn your head to the left. Turn your head to the left, and could you place your fingers on your femoral arteries down there in the groin? Take a moment to tune in and feel where the artery is, where that pulse is down in the hips. Once you find it there, get your fingers there right on that pulse. Relax in your shoulders and your neck and your legs so that you can feel the shape of the blood vessel. Ride it like a surfboard rider. And now sensing the rhythm of the beats and the swoosh between each beat. Roll your pelvis in a circle. Only as big a movement as, you can still feel the movement of the pulse. And if you lose it, just pause, come back and get it again. And then continue rolling. That continuous flow of blood through your whole body. And of course, your rib cage and your head, the blood and the pulse flows through there too. So as you roll your pelvis in time with your heartbeat, feel that movement all the way through your rib cage and your head. Count the heartbeats or feel, move in time with them. So you feel that point where the middle of the beat is. And how that beat rings out until the next one. And how this gentle movement can flow along that river. And you could lift your head if that was easy. How does that influence the way you feel your pelvis and your rib cage and your head move in this circle? Feeling and the sound of this pulse through your whole body. Well, leave that, roll onto your back and rest. the sound of your heart now. The feeling of the pulse through your whole body. And just to compare, once again hold on to your femoral artery down there in the groin. Take your time to find it and relax yourself. And then once again roll your pelvis around in a circle. And just notice now how, you reach down toward the right with the hip and how the left shoulder presses into the ground, how the rib cage and your pelvis sort of move in opposition. And as you tune into the flow of blood and the regular rhythm of your pulse, how you can spread your attention through the whole of your body. Primary rhythm of our lives, of life, flowing through our entire body. And as we soften, how we can all flow along that river. And then leave that and just rest there. And when you're ready, slowly open your eyes. And take your hand and one hand and find your carotid pulse on the side of your neck there. And now, still listening to the pulse, could you roll over slowly and come up to stand? You have to go very slowly. Stop if you lose it. Get the pulse back again and then slowly roll over onto your side and come up to standing, all the while feeling this pulse. And just stand there when you do come up, in your own time though. And reflect on this primary rhythm of life in standing. And when you're ready, shift your weight from side to side a little bit. And then try walking. Listening to the pulse of life.